Hello lords and ladies of the internet, I'm King of Candor, and today I'm going to be talking about building better backstories for your characters. Character backstories are one of the subjects I get the most questions on from new and veteran players. This video will be a guide to the essentials of making a good backstory. Before I can talk about the specifics of backstories and some tips and questions for them, I think we need to establish the length of the backstory first. I know lots of players who scoff at the idea of even writing a backstory. They feel like their character will develop as we play, and the game having a backstory makes it too rigid. I also know there are a lot of players who have overly detailed backstories, hoping for all of it to be added to the campaign. My way lies in the middle. Your backstory should be detailed enough that a game master has something to pull from, but also loose enough that you can adjust it for the campaign and change things. I suggest when writing a backstory, you keep it brief with obvious gaps. What do I mean by this? It starts by having enough detail that there are solid foundations, with enough holes that the game master can put their own content there. To explain this better, I'm going to compare it to the other two backstory ways, the minimalist and the elaborate one. In a minimalist backstory, you get the benefit of flexibility. This is the easiest style for game masters to work with. They can easily add new ideas to them since there's nothing to stop them from doing so. This could also allow you to react to the campaign and be quite interesting. However, it lacks all the benefits of grounding your character at first and can feel very wishy-washy, being dragged in different directions. This also means that you don't have any presence in the world, so you won't be able to plan for things when your long-lost cousin shows up or when your sister is secretly the princess. I also find players like this are much less invested in the world. It's also quite strange if all of a sudden you find out your character is a prince, and the next week you find out your father was a vampire. It can make your character feel quite random and muddled. When talking about an elaborate backstory, you get the benefit of depth. This style is very easy to go overboard with though. You have a fully realized person here. All the bells and whistles have been thought out. You can have interesting and meaningful interactions with the world. From the start, you'll be able to be a presence and all the other players will understand your character very well. However, without flexibility, your character might accidentally be the wrong fit for the campaign. If you wrote an elaborate plot about a great barbarian killing your father and kidnapping your sister, where you've sworn vengeance upon him and his tribe to the north, and then the game takes you to the far south deserts, it'll feel kind of weird. You also run the risk of adding elements to a setting that a game master wasn't prepared for. The most common version of this I see is when a player wants to secretly be a robot or a magical construct in a fantasy setting. They have some elaborate backstory about them being an experiment done by a mad wizard when the game master doesn't have that type of technology in their setting. Due to this inflexibility, your character will start to feel like a bit of a spoilsport as well. They will constantly be at odds with the game master, and they will just stop including your content because it's so fleshed out it's hard to deal with and difficult to include. There is also a secondary issue where you've simply accomplished far too much for your level. I once had a player write a backstory which was, he trained as a knight from his youth, who won a tournament by defeating the best knights in a kingdom. He then fell in love with a sorcerer queen, slayed a young dragon as it came to burn down his village. He led a rebellion to put his brother on the throne, and then was exiled from his homeland because his brother was afraid of pretenders to the throne. The characters were level 1, and their first quest was to kill an escaped magical rat that could go invisible. It was large, but his only ability was invisibility. It had 4 hit points. His backstory and character level were at odds. My backstory method is brief with obvious gaps. Let me give an example so you can understand. Let's say we're making an elf wizard named Dagmar. This elf was raised by an evil cult and was eventually saved by a powerful wizard. This wizard taught him how to use magic and has since disappeared. While he trained Dagmar, he always talked about using magic for good and stopping the evils of this world. So that is why Dagmar has decided to become an adventurer. He also wants to fight evil. You could add a little bit more detail here if you wanted, but I think for this example it fits. So, what did I do here? Notice how I did not name the wizard. I did not name the evil cult. I didn't even decide on which god the evil cult was of. Heck, if you look closely, you can ask the question, why was Dagmar raised by a cult? Was he kidnapped as a child? Perhaps he was raised by them because his parents were cult members. Or was he an orphan sold into slavery to this cult? I don't know, and that's the benefit of leaving a gap. If the Game Master has plans for this campaign to have the heroes fight against the forces of Satan, suddenly this evil cult can come back and try to reclaim Dagmar for Satan. If instead we travel to a far-off land to work for a merchant king in his fight against pirates, Dagmar will want to stop the evil, just like his master taught him. Maybe we're traveling to the big capital city of the land, working several jobs for different factions in a political intrigue game, and we find out that his former master used to be the court wizard until he was exiled one day. I can think of hundreds of ways to use a simple backstory in many games. So, how do you leave gaps in a backstory? Take a more complex backstory and start reducing the proper nouns. If Dagmar knew his family was the head of the cult, that would make it a little bit strange if the Game Master has a dwarf plan for this cult leader. Sure, you could change it, but that's going to require him to do more work. Also, simply having nothing there means the Game Master will just have to make up stuff, which is not fun either. You want something to work off of. The Game Master has a hard enough time trying to make encounters for everybody, so if you want him to make content that addresses your character, then help him out by showing him what you want to see and guiding his creativity towards content you wish to encounter. This backstory also lacks a lot of the extra fluff that is not needed. Dagmar probably had some friends and even possibly a girlfriend at one point. However, by not talking about it, I don't bog everybody down on unnecessary details. The Game Master can clearly see the exact content I want to deal with. He could understand that I want to see my master again, or simply fight evil, or deal with this evil cult. You don't need to have an exact plan of how the things will happen, but simply knowing that they'll be touched on is enough. So, what are some suggestions that I have for designing a good backstory? I usually try to answer a few questions that'll help me out. You should always answer the following 3 questions. Where were you born or raised? How did you learn your skills? And why are you adventuring? Let's break these questions down further. Where were you born or raised? Now, this can seem boring at first, however your origin is important. Were you like Anakin, born as a slave and then found by the Jedi? Maybe you're more like Batman. Your parents are rich and powerful, but killed before you get to know them. Knowing where your character is from will allow you to have some nice flavor and color your interactions. It will also help explain your worldview. You don't have to be tied to this area. You're more than welcome to move on from it and have it play a minor role, but at least knowing where you started will help. How did you learn your skills? This is one of the more fun questions to answer. You can do almost anything here and it's not wrong. Perhaps you were raised by a ghost who taught you an ancient and lost martial art. Maybe you learned your skills in the arena, being so poor you had to fight in gladiator matches just to survive. What if you went to college? You studied it with the Grand Wizard, and he taught you everything since you're his favorite student. The reason you want to think about this is it changes some of the ways your character interacts. Let's say you went to college, and they taught you how to be a wizard. What if one of your instructors was a retired former adventurer? He probably wouldn't teach academic theory as much as he would practical skills. So maybe he teaches you how to use a spear and shield as well as magic. That small change is enough to make your character stand out from all the other wizards. And finally, why are you adventuring? Are you seeking glory and riches? Maybe you are on the run and looking for allies. One of my favorite backstories is, my father or mother was an adventurer, and I want to live up to their glory. Knowing this will help you make choices about how you interact with the world. If you are adventuring for glory and money, you probably won't accept favors instead of gold. Or, if a peasant can't pay you, you might take something like a family locket or their prized pig as payment. If you are on the run looking for allies, then obviously you will want to make as many friends as possible, so maybe allowing the peasant to not pay you and have a favor at a later date is more worth it. When figuring out why you're adventuring, make sure that you have both long-term and short-term goals. Having a bit of both will allow you to keep the character working towards a long-term goal, while also being able to have small successes along the way. These short-term goals are also really easy if the game master wants to add something to interest your character for a quest. Those are the important questions, but I usually try to answer a couple of these other questions that I'm going to rapid fire. Who are your parents or family? Are they still in your life? Do you have any pets or animals that you're attached to? Do you have any friends or acquaintances that you value a lot? How does your character feel about magic or a setting-specific thing such as the Force for Star Wars? Alternatively, if they have magic, how do they feel about people disliking it? Does your character have any prejudices? If they worship the wrong religion or are from a race that cannot be trusted, would you voice that? Who are your personal heroes? They don't need to have exact names or titles, but what makes them a hero to you? For example, if you wanted your character to idolize someone like Hercules because he's strong and he solves problems. Does your character have any goals? If so, what will they do when these goals are achieved? This question is a bit of a double-edged sword, since most people will leave a life of murder and mayhem if their immediate goals are achieved. Is your character religious? This is actually a very important question, since most games take place in a fantasy realm where the gods exist. It would be strange to deny the existence of gods when you could look around and see their works on the planet. Also, religion is a bit complicated. Do you worship one god exclusively? What about having a small pantheon that you pray to the various deities for different boons? The point of these questions is not they must all be answered by you. They are simply inspiration tools to help you figure out the idea for your character. I hope this list helps you, and I look forward to hearing one day about all the great backstories you've come up with. That is all for today. Thank you for watching this far. If you enjoyed the content, I'd appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. I'm looking forward to your candor in the comments below. Have a nice day.